What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to continue to examine 100 years of World Championship fights. Now, in my last video, I began 1945, and I thought about closing out Henry Armstrong's career. He ended it in 1944. And those of you who know me know I have a great deal of respect for Henry Armstrong. Having ranked number 4, my all-time ranking list, is the greatest fighter in boxing history because of his accomplishments. Now, I don't know if I told you that I met Henry Armstrong. Had a great deal of conversation, detailed information with him. And Henry Armstrong really broke down a lot of information to me that as I got older began to appreciate. And he talked about the time in which he came as a young man. Talked about his career, yes. But what I got out of it mostly was the time in which he came. And that's what needs to be respected more than anything else. Who is Henry Armstrong actually? What did he have to accomplish in order to achieve his goals? I mean, you're talking about a young man who, along with Joe Louis, along with Archie Moore, along with Jersey Joe Walcott, and many others. But I mention those men to you because they have similar backgrounds. Now, Joe Louis was 100% Cherokee Indian on his mother's side. Henry Armstrong was 100% Iroquois Indian on his grandmother's side. And they were able to get away with certain things more so than other black fighters. But they had it hard. Both their fathers passed away when they were young. So they went to search for work. I mean, just think about that for one moment. 10 years old, 12 years old, leaving the state to go find work. Dropping out of school. Henry Armstrong was going to go to college. As a matter of fact, he was in college and he dropped out. Once again, searching for work. And like Jack Dempsey, he was somewhat of a hobo. He would jump on boxcars, travel across states. 1932, he tried out for the Olympic Games. Ran across a trainer by the name of Harry Wiley Sr. Now, why his name is important, and I'm going to be mentioning him a few times in this series, 1946, 1951, and possibly 1952, when Robinson had lost to Maxim in New York's Yankee Stadium due to heat exhaustion. When Robinson won the Welter Weight Championship belt over Tommy Bell. When Robinson was going to lose for the second time to Randy Turpin, the New York's Polo Grounds. It was Harry Wiley Sr. He was able to convince Dr. Nardiotto and Ruby Goldstein, who was the referee at that time, to give him another shot because they were going to stop the fight because of a headbutt. But we'll get into that as we get to 1951 with Randy Turpin and Ray Robinson. But Harry Wiley Sr. started out in YMCA. He was a young boxer, but he got hit by a taxi cab and he couldn't continue fighting anymore, so he became a trainer. But he started out wrapping hands for Sam Langford. He was a water boy for Jack Dempsey. He was one of the greatest trainers in boxing history. No question about it. had fighters such as Canada Lee, who, by the way, was in a movie called Keep Punching that Henry Armstrong would play a starting role in. But Harry Wiley Sr. would also train Lou Ambers, Sammy Mandel, George Godfrey, many great up-and-coming young fighters. Louis Spider Valentine, Danny Cox, Ray Robinson. I mean, he was in there with Hall of Fame caliber fighters. In fact, the last corner he was in was Muhammad Ali when he fought Buster Mathis Sr. And that was because of Angelo Dundee. But I'll get into that as we move forward in this series. But Harry Wiley Sr. would be the first black trainer to guide the Olympic team. And he brought back 5 medals, 2 gold and 3 bronze. One of the young men that was on that team was Lou Salica, wound up becoming a champion. And he would be responsible with Harry Wiley Sr. to carving out the details in the style of Henry Armstrong. Taught him how to use his head to guide and steer his opponent in the position that he wanted him to go in. Taught him to watch the opponent's feet. Taught him to use his shoulder and his forearm as part of the tools of his trade. I mean, Henry Armstrong was a phenomenal fighter. He was born December 12th, 1912, Columbus, Mississippi. He died October 24th, 1988, in Los Angeles, California. He would hold 3 championship belts simultaneously. October 29th, 1937, he would be the first black featherweight champion of America in boxing history. And he would do it at the Mecca, New York's Madison Square Garden. And only a few black fighters would accomplish that feat. Theodore Tiger Flowers would become middleweight champion when he defeated Harry Greb. He's the middleweight champion of the world. That was in New York's Madison Square Garden. John Henry Lewis would become the light heavyweight champion, first black fighter of America in order to do that. Balansiki wasn't from America. John Henry Lewis was. He did it at New York's Madison Square Garden. He defeated Bob Olin in 1935 in order to make that happen. Henry Armstrong, featherweight, welterweight, back down to lightweight. 9 months to make that happen. 19 welterweight championship title defenses. He would lose his crown in the lightweight division, August 22nd, 1939, to the man he won it from, Lou Ambers, August 17th, 1938. He swallowed 10 ounces of blood in 5 rounds because they told him, Arthur Donovan, that he was going to stop the fight. And he pled with Arthur Donovan because there was blood all over the ring. And he said, I will not spill any more blood from my mouth. Please let me finish the fight. And he would become a 3-time welterweight champion. October 4th, 1940, he would lose his welterweight championship belt, New York's Madison Square Garden, to Fritzy Zivit. On that undercard, you had Ray Robinson, who was a protege of Harry Wiley Sr., began his professional debut. And Robinson was so insulted that his idol, Henry Armstrong, would lose his welterweight championship belt. That he made a promise to Armstrong in the locker room. He would get his revenge. And that reminds me of Mike Tyson speaking to Muhammad Ali over the telephone when Ali lost to Larry Holmes in 1980. Mike Tyson told him that he'll get him back, and he did. And Henry Armstrong would face Fritzy Zivit once again, January 17th, 1941. This time he'd be stopped in 12 rounds. I did a video on that fight. And shortly after that, Henry Armstrong would take a back seat to Ray Robinson, as Ray Robinson was get his revenge, and he would stop Fritzy Zivit. You see, Henry Armstrong, Joe Louis, Kid Gavilan, the Cuban Hawk, Johnny Bratton, Ray Robinson, their idols were Kid Chocolate. And Kid Chocolate's idol was Black Bill. Henry Armstrong in 1939 defended his welterweight championship belt 5 times. In October, 1 month. I mean, you're looking at a fighter who was so underrated. It's absolutely amazing. Be introduced in the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1954. Become a minister in 1951. Fought from 1931 to 1945. Had 175 bouts. He won 97 fights. I mean, it's amazing what he has accomplished. So I just wanted to salute Henry Armstrong. One of the greatest fighters in boxing history as we leave 1944 and we enter 1945. 1937, he had 27 fights. No losses with 26 knockouts. Did that in 1 year. Shout out to Henry Armstrong. March 9th, 1945. Rocky Graziano defeats Philadelphia slugger Billy Arnold. Graziano was down himself early in the fight. He would come back. And he would stop Billy Arnold in 3 rounds. Now, he was 7-1 underdog. And Billy Arnold was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His name was William Marshall Arnold. He was born September 21st, 1926. He died May 18th, 1995. He was 68 years of age at the time of his death. He would reside in Port Richmond, Pennsylvania. Fought from 1943 to 1948. Had a record of 51 total bouts. 41 wins, 9 losses, 34 knockouts. And he was stopped 5 times himself. And Billy Arnold would be in a ring with Ernest Big Cat Robinson, Bernie Miller, Graziano, Fritzy Zivit. I'm going to show you 2 opponents of Billy Arnold. I've been meaning to show you these fighters before. Ernest Cat Robinson and Bernie Miller. Now you're looking at Ernest Robinson. They call him Ernest Cat Robinson. And I have to get back to you with Bernie Miller. April 18th, 1945, Trenton lightweight sensation Ike Williams knocks out Mexico City's lightweight Juan Zarita 2 rounds to win the vacant NBA lightweight championship crown. Juan Zarita had a record of 130 wins, 22 losses, and 1 draw coming into this fight. Ike Williams and his camp were chased by the Mexican City crowd, had bottles that were thrown into the ring. Ike Williams never had a chance to wear his belt around his waist in the ring. Didn't receive his belt until he got into the locker room. And this reminds me, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Alan Minter, 1980. In the case of Alan Minter, he would shoot out racial slurs and agitate and antagonize his fan base. They despised Marvin Hagler. And they threw everything but the kitchen sink in the ring. Marvin Hagler could not collect his belt or even have a dignified interview in his locker room. He couldn't have a ceremony in the ring. Ike Williams was in a similar situation, although Juan Zarita didn't shoot out racial slurs. It wasn't racial, it was a different circumstance. But Mexico City was a proud city, and they did not want to hear that their man had lost to Ike Williams. So Ike Williams had to run for dear life along with his camp to the locker room, for he would be receiving his championship belt. Quite amazing. Now, Ike hit a roadblock, 1944, when he was badly beaten while making 3 trips to the canvas. In the 12th round, by the Bobcat, Bob Montgomery. My dad was at that fight. Man, did he tell me that fight was something else. Both men threw combinations beyond belief at one another. Both swollen in the face. Ribs were not the same when they walked out of the ring as they were when they walked in. The audience, in that arena, screamed for joy when Ike Williams was counted out. Now, I met Ike Williams as well. Several times. Shame how he passed away. And we'll be talking more about Ike Williams as the series goes on. Was he something else? He had a war with Bo Jack that is beyond wars. 1948. Fought him 3 times. Possibly 4 times. Amazing fighter was Ike Williams. May 21st and May 26th, Archie Moore would defeat and then knock out Lloyd Marshall, 10 rounds. Baltimore, Maryland, and Cleveland, Ohio. Now, Lloyd Marshall would be coming close to the end of his career. Began his boxing career in 1936. But unfortunately for Lloyd Marshall, didn't quite get the breaks that he wanted and deserved. Stop Freddie Mills, Ezra Charles, Jimmy Bivins, Jake LaMotta. What a fighter Lloyd Marshall was. But Archie Moore would be a bit too much for Lloyd Marshall. 2 separate occasions, both in the 10th round, one by knockout. This won't be the end of my conversation concerning Lloyd Marshall. And certainly not the end for Archie Moore. Archie Moore would be in the ring with Ezra Charles. 3 separate occasions, he would lose all 3 times to Ezra Charles. Lose to Charlie Burley twice. But he would defeat great fighters. We'll learn a little bit more about Archie Moore. Freddie Red Cochrane, Rocky Graziano, June 29, 1945. Graziano comes back in the 9th round, knocks out Freddie Red Cochrane, Welter Weight Champion, 10 rounds. It'll be a non-title fight. August 26, 1945, Graziano comes back once again, stops Freddie Red Cochrane, 10 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden. Graziano would never get a title shot with Freddie Red Cochrane. But he will get an opportunity 1946, when he would face Gary Indiana's Man of Steel, Tony Zale. Freddie Red Cochrane would refuse to face number 1 ranked Ray Robinson. We'll talk about the Graziano and Zale fight as the series goes on. August 2nd, 1945. Jersey Joe Walcott defeats Joe Baskey, 20 rounds, Camden, New Jersey. It was at the Convention Hall in Camden, New Jersey. Now, the referee was Paul Cavalier. He awards Walcott the nod in front of 3,500 spectators. 31-year-old Walcott stood 6 foot, weighed 188 pounds, and had a 74-inch reach. He had a record of 29 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw, and 20 knockouts. 31-year-old Baskey stood 6 foot 1 inch, weighed 218 pounds, and had a 76-inch reach. He had a record of 46 wins, 4 losses, 3 draws, and 19 knockouts. Now, Joe Baskey was born January 14, 1922, in Marlin Heights, Pennsylvania. He died August 6, 1977. He was 55 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in New York. Fought from 1940 to 1954. Had a total bout career of 73 fights, 61 wins. He had 30 knockouts and 9 losses. He'd be in the ring with Ezra Charles and Bob Baker, Maynard Jones. Pretty good fighter was Joe Baskey. That's the man you're looking at right here. Very rugged and very competitive. We would take on Joe Walcott, August 2nd, 1945. It'd be a 20-round contest, Camden, New Jersey. August 22nd, 1945, Cleveland's heavyweight Jimmy Bivins stops Archie Moore in 6 rounds in Cleveland, Ohio. 38 seconds at Lakefront Stadium. Now, Bivins was undefeated in 3 years. He drops Moore cold in the 2nd round. It was ruled a foul. Bivins stops Moore's 27-0 fighting streak. That was amazing. Now, 25-year-old Bivins stood 5 foot 9 inches. He weighed 186 pounds and had a 76-inch reach. Had a record of 46 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, 16 knockouts. 28-year-old Moore stood 5 foot 11 inches. Weighed 168 pounds, had a 75-inch reach, and had a record of 73 wins, 9 losses, 5 draws, and 56 knockouts. Now, during those years, Jimmy Bivins, who turned professional in 1940, Archie Moore, 36, along with Lloyd Marshall, they had to fight one another several times. And as the Charles were getting to the mix, he turned pro in 1940. But Archie Moore would be in the ring with fighters such as Bandit Ramiro, and the Hughes brothers. Big Boy Hughes was a very hard puncher. Eddie Booker. Oh, remember that Archie Moore would be fighting during his time. Have Archie Moore ranked number 6, my all-time ranking list. He put his work in. But he couldn't defeat Jimmy Bivins on the night of August 22nd, 1945. Now you're looking at Jimmy Bivins and Archie Moore in later years. Archie Moore's to your left and Jimmy Bivins is to your right. If you notice, Archie Moore uses the jab consistently, but he's standing straight up. And Jimmy Bivins are using tactical moves that Ray Robinson would be taught by a very good trainer, Harry Wiley Sr. If you notice, Bivins would be jabbing consistently to the breadbasket. And there's a reason for that. If you watch Floyd Mayweather, he does it a lot. He's taught by Roger Mayweather. And Roger Mayweather was an old school fighter. He learned the tricks of the trade. And that's why you always hear Roger Mayweather talk about the old time fighters. Ray Robinson and Armstrong. And Joe Louis. And he would tell you, R.I.P. to Roger Mayweather. They were top-notch fighters. And he would rank them number 1, number 2, and number 3. And if you study long enough, you'll understand why. Look at Archie Moore and look at Jimmy Bivins. They're playing to one another's game. Moore consistently moves from the waistline. He's always doing something with his hands. And he's befuddling Jimmy Bivins. But if you notice, Jimmy Bivins always comes back with a jab to the chest, to the stomach, or to the head. That's it for me, Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. 100 years of world championship fights will continue. 1945, 1946. Salute.